Welcome back to Galaxy Recaps. Today we'll be diving into an action thriller film titled The Killer's Game. Enjoy the recap. In a grand opera house in Budapest, Hitman Joe blends into the crowd as a seemingly ordinary theater-goer, while keeping a close watch on his target and the bodyguards surrounding him. Once the audience is settled and the show starts, Joe quietly makes his way upstairs. A few minutes later, one of the bodyguards spots a shoe sticking out from behind a curtain and approaches to investigate. It's a trap. Joe quickly emerges, kills the bodyguard with a knife, and hides the body behind the curtain. He then stealthily moves down the corridor, eliminating another guard with a single shot. Joe eventually reaches the balcony where his target is seated. The man, sensing his fate, desperately offers to pay Joe triple the current fee to spare his life. Without hesitation, Joe refuses and shoots the man in the head. Calmly, Joe instructs the man's terrified date to remain silent. She bolts in fear. Before leaving, Joe glances at the stage and for a fleeting moment locks eyes with Maze, the star performer of the evening. As Joe exits, he suddenly experiences a sharp headache and dizziness. Meanwhile, downstairs, another bodyguard notices the woman fleeing and tries to contact his boss. When he receives no response, he rushes upstairs and discovers the carnage. Unfortunately, security spots him holding a gun and mistakenly prepares to arrest him. Forced to act, the bodyguard opens fire, killing one officer. Another officer manages to call for backup before hiding. The bodyguard takes cover in a balcony, but the pursuing officer shoots him through the door. In a desperate move, the bodyguard leaps off the balcony, crashing onto the stage below. Chaos erupts as the dancers and audience scramble for safety. From the balcony, another officer takes aim and fatally shoots the bodyguard. In the ensuing panic, Maze is swept away by the frantic crowd only to be knocked to the ground. Her phone slips from her grasp as her hand and feet are painfully trampled. Spotting her in distress, Joe rushes over, helping her to her feet and retrieving her phone. As he escorts her outside, the headache strikes again. Waiting until Maze is distracted, Joe vanishes into the night. Once home, Joe realizes he's accidentally taken Maze's phone with him. He downs some medicine along with a heavy dose of alcohol before collapsing into bed. The following day, Joe visits a doctor, who conducts a series of tests and suggests that Joe might be experiencing the long-term effects of years of head trauma. The doctor tells Joe that the test results will be ready soon, but he already advises Joe to start thinking about a new career. Afterward, Joe visits his handler and close friend Svi, who shares the same concern. Svi suggests Joe take a vacation and maybe even find someone special to share his life with. Reluctantly, Joe heads to Maze's dance studio to return her phone. Maze is thankful and playfully flirts with Joe, even giving him her number. As Joe leaves, he tosses the number in the trash but quickly regrets it, fishing it back out moments later. That evening, Joe awkwardly texts Maze and they agree to meet for a date. Their dinner date turns out to be a great success, with the two sharing a wonderful time together, though Joe keeps his profession a secret. Over the next few days, Joe splits his time between dating Maze and continuing his mercenary missions across Europe, traveling to France, Romania, Austria, and Switzerland. His relationship with Maze becomes more serious, and they begin spending nights together, but the constant headaches persist and the medication loses its effectiveness. When Joe finally receives his test results, the doctor delivers devastating news. Joe has a neurodegenerative brain disorder. There's no cure, and he only has about 3 months to live. Reeling from the shock, Joe declines the doctor's offer of palliative care and therapy. Instead, he heads home and dives into researching the illness online, horrified by videos of people losing control of their bodies. In a moment of despair, Joe contemplates ending his life with a gun but reminds himself to think of Maze. Determined to take action, he opens a hidden safe, takes out all his money, and throws his weapons into the river. The next day, Joe meets with Svi and offers $2 million for his own death. Joe explains that while he would have taken his own life, life insurance wouldn't pay out if he did, and he wants Maze to get the money. Svi refuses, unwilling to put a contract on his closest friend, no matter the price. Desperate, Joe seeks out Antoinette, a former assassin who now works as a handler. Antoinette harbors a personal grudge against Joe for killing her father, who had once been his mentor. She's eager to accept Joe's offer, and gladly places a contract on his head. Joe asks her to set the mission to begin at midnight, as he still has a few things left to handle. After Joe leaves, Antoinette logs into an assassin app to assign the contract. She first contacts Lovedoll, a hitman currently in Switzerland finishing another job. Lovedoll turns down the mission, saying $2 million isn't worth it. Next, she reaches out to Goyang and his gang, who are enjoying a night out at a karaoke bar in Prague. The gang, disguised as workers, reveals their lethal skills by swiftly killing their targets in perfect coordination. Goyoung happily accepts the contract on Joe's life. Antoinette, wanting to ensure Joe's demise, also sends the contract to the Longest brothers, brutal killers currently in the process of executing a man by tying him to their motorcycles and ripping him apart. Meanwhile, that night, Joe meets with Maze, unaware that Max is following them. Heartbroken, Joe ends their relationship, and Maze, devastated, gives him one final goodbye before walking away in tears. Joe returns home, starts drinking, and records a message for Maze where he reveals the truth about his life as a hitman, intending for her to receive it after his death. However, in his drunken state, he mistakenly sends the message before it's complete. As Maze listens to the confession, Joe receives a call from his doctor who reveals shocking news. There had been a mix-up with his test results. Joe is not dying, in fact he's in perfect health and could live a long, full life. Realizing that the contract is still active and that he's only minutes away from midnight, Joe prepares a trap. Goyoung and his gang soon arrive, using cigarette smoke to detect the laser sensors Joe has set up at the entrance. They skillfully dodge the traps and proceed further into the apartment. From his hiding spot, Joe announces that he's canceling the contract, but Goyoung dismisses him, saying that contracts must be honored. One of the gang members follows Joe's voice into the bathroom where Joe ambushes him. Despite the man's martial arts skills, Joe easily overpowers him, throwing him through a glass wall. Another gang member, a woman wielding an axe, slashes Joe's back, but he pushes her onto the shattered glass and drags her throat across the shards, killing her brutally. Enraged, the first man attacks Joe again, but when he attempts a flashy kick, Joe breaks his leg and hurls him through a wall. Next, another gang member attacks with a sword, prompting a fierce fight. After exchanging blows, Joe disarms the man by breaking his arm and finishes him off by slamming him against a column. The last gang member, a woman with 2 large blades, manages to stab Joe in the shoulder after a series of missed swings. Despite the injury, Joe continues to fight, landing a powerful punch that knocks out several of her teeth. Not only Goyoung remains. Goyoung throws a knife into Joe's leg, but Joe pulls the blade from his shoulder and kills Goyoung with it. As a final gesture, Joe lights one of Goyoung's cigarettes as a farewell before leaving the apartment. On his way out, he activates a trap, detonating explosives that destroy his home and send the toothless woman's body flying through a window. Her body crashes onto the gang's car below, causing it to explode as well. Out on the street, Joe uses Goyoung's phone to call Antoinette, informing her that he's canceling the contract but that she can keep the money. Enraged, Antoinette declares that she will double the bounty on his head, determined to avenge her father's death. Suddenly, Joe hears motorcycles approaching. It's the Longest brothers. He takes refuge in an old building as the brothers, skilled in using their bikes as weapons, launch a series of attacks. Though Joe dodges a few of their stunts, he's overpowered by most of their strikes. Desperate, he grabs a nearby pipe. When one of the brothers charges at him, Joe swings the pipe, knocking him off the bike and finishing him by stomping on his head, killing him instantly. The second Longest brother, enraged by his sibling's death, revs up his bike and charges at Joe. But Joe swiftly kicks the bike's front wheel, sending the brother flying through the air. With both brothers down, Joe seizes the opportunity to steal the bike and make his escape. Meanwhile, Antoinette sends out the updated contract to Europe's top hitmen. Seeing that the reward has doubled to 4 million, Lovedoll, still in Switzerland enjoying the company of women, finally accepts the mission. In Scotland, the notorious Mackenzie brothers gleefully accept the job and celebrate by smashing beer bottles over each other's heads. Elsewhere, in a seedy club in England, the Party Girls, a deadly group disguised as dancers, use cleverly concealed weapons in their outfits to slaughter the unsuspecting clients. When one man tries to fight back, the girls easily overpower him, proving their deadly skill. In Spain, a group of criminals preparing drugs for sale is ambushed by Bodas, a hitman who uses his knife-adorned boots and graceful dance moves to wipe out everyone in the room with lethal precision. Back in Budapest, Joe seeks help from Svi, who uses glue to patch up Joe's wounds. Since Svi doesn't have any weapons to offer, he gives Joe some leftover explosives from a previous job. Svi's wife also offers her assistance by giving Joe a thorough massage, which unexpectedly cures Joe's headaches, dizziness, and double vision by cracking his neck, a temporary but welcome relief. Soon after, Lovedoll arrives in Budapest by train, and Antoinette provides him with all the intel she has on Joe, including Maze's location. She also sends her cousin Money to pick up Lovedoll. Money, though eager, is both annoying and a bit dim-witted, but Antoinette promised her uncle that she would train him to be a hitman. When they catch up to Maze outside her building, she instinctively fights back, delivering a swift kick that takes Money down. Lovedoll, however, knocks Maze unconscious with a punch and they kidnap her. The next morning, Joe heads to an old castle in the countryside, where Max quickly tracks him down and shares the location with all the other hitmen. This is part of Joe and Svi's plan. Svi deliberately leaked the intel to lure the hitmen to the castle. Joe prepares for the inevitable showdown, setting up his weapons throughout the castle. The Mackenzie brothers are the first to arrive. As they cautiously enter the ancient structure, Joe tosses a grenade their way, forcing them into action. Emerging from the shadows, Joe prepares to take them head-on, ready for the bloody battle that's about to unfold. At first, Joe holds his own while fighting one of the Mackenzie brothers, but as soon as the siblings team up, they overpower him, kicking him into a suit of armor. Thinking quickly, Joe grabs one of the armor's gauntlets and uses it to his advantage, landing more powerful punches. However, the brothers' coordinated teamwork continues to overwhelm him. In the middle of their assault, the brothers start bickering, giving Joe the perfect opening to activate one of his traps. He pulls a rope, causing a massive chandelier to crash down, trapping one of the brothers and pushing him into a mounted deer head where he's gruesomely impaled by the antlers. Joe wastes no time. He breaks off a piece of the antler and engages the remaining brother in hand-to-hand combat. After exchanging a few hits, Joe manages to stab the second brother to death with the antler. Before Joe can catch his breath, the party girls burst in, guns blazing. Joe grabs the dead brother's body and uses it as a shield, charging into another room. The girls throw a grenade, but Joe manages to dodge it and returns fire with the Mackenzie brothers' gun. A second grenade lands closer, this time injuring Joe before he manages to take cover. With the gunfight intensifying, Joe runs out of bullets. One of the girls, thinking she has the upper hand, moves in, but she accidentally steps on one of Joe's traps and the explosion sends her sprawling. Joe quickly drags her body to a corner, pulls the pins from her grenades, and tosses her at the second party girl. The resulting explosion kills them both. As the blast throws Joe through a door, he manages to grab one of the fallen girl's guns just before being hurled by the force. On the other side of the door, Bodas is waiting for him. He swiftly disarms Joe and puts on his earbuds, letting the rhythm of his music guide his deadly movements. A brutal hand-to-hand fight follows, with Bodas proving to be a formidable opponent, matching Joe's skills and landing blows with his blade-tipped boots. Joe fights back by knocking the earbuds from Bodas' ears, forcing him to lose his rhythm. Realizing their punches are ineffective, both men grab swords, continuing their vicious duel. After a tense few minutes, Joe finally disarms Bodas. Desperate, Bodas grabs a gun and fires at Joe, who ducks behind a table and activates another trap. An explosion rips through the room, killing Bodas and leaving nothing but his boots behind. Outside, Lovedoll and his group arrive. Seeing the hitmen's vehicles scattered around, Lovedoll immediately realizes this is a trap. He orders Money to stay with Maze while he investigates. As soon as Lovedoll is out of sight, Maze, ever resourceful, manipulates Money into letting her stretch her legs. She feigns a fall and grabs a nearby branch, knocking Money out cold. Meanwhile, Lovedoll calls Joe using Maze's phone, offering to release her in exchange for Joe surrendering himself. Before they can negotiate, they are interrupted by Max and his heavily armed team, who storm the castle. Carefully avoiding any traps, they begin sweeping through the area. Joe, hidden in the shadows, waits for the right moment and detonates another explosive, taking out half of Max's team in one blow. With the chaos unfolding, Joe stealthily sneaks behind one of the soldiers, stabs him, and takes his gun. He swiftly eliminates the remaining guards in the room and makes his escape through the back door, leaving a trail of destruction behind. As Joe makes his way out of the castle's back door, he finds Lovedoll waiting for him in the garden. Lovedoll forces Joe to drop his gun, and just as they begin negotiating a possible truce, Maze appears in Money's stolen car and rams into Lovedoll. She opens the door for Joe and the two speed off while Max's remaining men open fire, but their shots miss. On the road, Joe finally confesses everything to Maze: the illness mix-up, his real job as a hitman, and his code of only killing criminals, never civilians. He swears that he's retiring for good. Maze smiles and tells Joe she's pregnant, a revelation that fills Joe with joy and determination to make things right. As they share this hopeful moment, Maze suddenly passes out. Joe quickly discovers a bullet wound on her neck and realizes she's been shot. Panicking, Joe ditches the car and carries Maze to the nearest building, which happens to be a church. Inside, he's relieved to find that the bullet only grazed Maze, and she soon regains consciousness. Overcome with relief, Joe impulsively asks her to marry him, and Maze, still shaken but smiling, says yes. The local priest, however, is skeptical of this impromptu wedding. He points out that they don't have a marriage license, there are no witnesses, and neither of them are Catholic. After some persuasion, the priest agrees to marry them, on the condition that they first give confession. Joe, in an attempt to do things right, reluctantly confesses his long history of assassinations. The priest is horrified by Joe's past, but when Joe explains that he wants a second chance to live a better life as a father, the priest agrees to offer him redemption, provided he truly commits to retiring from his violent lifestyle. The simple ceremony begins, with Joe using a grenade pin as a makeshift wedding ring. However, the moment is interrupted when Lovedoll bursts into the church and opens fire. Joe quickly tackles Maze to protect her, but the priest is shot instead. As chaos ensues, a grenade is thrown into the church, filling the room with thick smoke, giving Joe and Maze the chance to escape with the wounded priest in tow. The grenade was tossed by Max, who soon enters the church and begins arguing with Lovedoll over who gets to claim the contract on Joe. In the confusion, Joe, Maze, and the priest hide in the back room tending to the priest's injury. Lovedoll, determined to finish the job, opens fire and manages to take down several of Max's men. Joe returns to the fight, shooting more of Max's soldiers while grenades continue to fall, igniting a fire that quickly spreads through the church. In the midst of the chaos, Lovedoll engages one of Max's men in hand-to-hand combat. As they fight, Max throws another grenade, causing a scaffolding to collapse and trap Lovedoll underneath it. With his last man injured, Max kills him without hesitation and begins searching the church for Joe. Joe attempts to sneak up on Max from behind, but when they face off in a tense standoff, Joe realizes he's out of bullets. A triumphant Max taunts Joe, claiming victory. But before Max can pull the trigger, Maze appears and blows Max's head off, saving Joe at the last second. Meanwhile, Antoinette is packing up, preparing to flee the country after realizing her plot has failed. Just as she's about to leave, Svi appears, confronting her for breaking the assassin's code just like her father had. Without hesitation, Svi shoots her in the head, ending her vendetta against Joe. Sometime later, Joe and Maze have a proper wedding, with the now recovered priest officiating and all their friends in attendance. As they settle into their new life, Joe fully embraces his role as a retired man ready to focus on family. However, Maze, ever pragmatic, reminds him that raising a child is expensive. With a wry smile, she suggests that Joe might need to take on just a couple more jobs to cover the costs. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.